9 experienced hikers tore their tent open from the inside in the dead of a Soviet winter night and ran barefoot into -30 degrees C. 6 were found dead of hypothermia, 3 with crushed ribs and a missing tongue. What made them run? This is the Dyatlov Pass mystery, a story that has haunted investigators, families, and conspiracy theorists for over 6 decades. Before we dive into theories and speculation, let's set the stage with the cold, hard facts that frame this chilling event. The Dyatlov Pass incident is not just a tale of tragedy, but a puzzle that refuses to be solved. Let's begin with the undisputed facts. The Dyatlov Pass incident occurred on the night of February 12, 1959 at Kholat Syakhl, the Dead Mountain in the northern Ural Mountains. The group, led by Igor Dyatlov, consisted of 10 hikers. 1 turned back early, leaving 9 who would never return. The tent was found cut open from the inside, with boots, food, and clothing left behind. Temperatures that night plummeted to -25 degrees C to -30 degrees C. The Soviet verdict was a compelling natural force, and the case was classified and sealed. The area was closed for 3 years, and the pass was named after Dyatlov posthumously. Dyatlov group planned to reach Odort Peak, but a snowstorm forced them off course to Kholat Syakhl. This deviation was crucial, as it placed them on the slope where tragedy struck. Maps recovered from the scene show their intended route versus the fatal campsite. The snowstorm reduced visibility, and the group ended up camping on the mountain slope, a decision that would prove fatal. Understanding their route helps us see how a series of small choices and environmental factors led to disaster. These were not reckless teenagers lost in the snow. The Dyatlov group were elite athletes, engineers, and experienced mountaineers. They trained for expeditions like this and were well prepared for the harsh Soviet winter. Their journey began in Sverdlovsk on January 23, 1959, targeting Odort, a peak with the highest difficulty rating. Their expertise makes the mystery even more chilling. How could such skilled hikers meet such a bizarre fate? Let's meet the 9 who did not return. Igor Dyatlov, the group leader, was found crawling back toward the tent. Zinaida Kolmogorova died similarly, dressed in layers of others' clothing. Rustam Slobodin had a skull fracture but was alive when he stopped moving. Yuri Krivnishenko and Yuri Doroshenko were found under the cedar tree, wearing only underwear with burns and frostbite. Lyudmila Dubinina suffered the most disturbing injuries, missing tongue, eyes, and crushed chest. Semyon Zolotaryov, a WWII veteran, had multiple rib fractures and mysterious background. Nikolai Thiboksbrignoles had a severe skull fracture, and Alexander Kolvatov showed traces of radioactivity. And hikers left Sverdlovsk, but only 1 returned. Yuri Yudin turned back due to illness, a decision that saved his life. He spent the rest of his days searching for answers, visiting the graves of his friends and reflecting on the tragedy. Yudin's story is a poignant reminder of fate and the enduring impact of the Dyatlov Pass incident. His last words expressed deep sorrow and a wish to exchange his life for those lost. Let's reconstruct the timeline. On January 23, the group departed by train. By January 27, they left the last human settlement. Yuri Yudin turned back on January 28. On January 31, they cached supplies and began their ascent. February 1 saw a snowstorm and the group drifting off course. By 5 p.m., they pitched their tent and ate dinner. Between 9:11 p.m., something forced them to cut the tent and flee. By February 2, all 9 were dead. The search began on February 20, and the tent was found on February 26. Bodies were recovered in stages, and the case was closed on May 28 with the verdict, unknown compelling natural force. The tent was found half buried in snow, sides ripped, and belongings left inside. 9 pairs of boots remained and dinner was still laid out half-eaten. Soviet investigators stood nearby, trying to make sense of the scene. The tent's state is one of the most puzzling aspects, cut from the inside, not crushed or ripped by external forces. This detail suggests panic and urgency among the hikers, raising questions about what could have caused such terror. Inside the tent, all boots, food, maps, and outer clothing were left behind. The stove was unlit. The tent was cut from the inside, with multiple jagged slashes. This means someone made a conscious, panicked decision to escape quickly. The urgency and terror are evident in the way the tent was cut. Investigators found no signs of external force, reinforcing the mystery of what drove the hikers to such desperate action. 8 or 9 tracks led away from the tent into the woods, nearly a mile away. Some prints were bare feet, some in socks, others in a single shoe. The footprints were calm and evenly spaced, indicating the group walked together, not in panic. This detail is crucial. It suggests the hikers were conscious and cooperative, and whatever they feared was behind them. The footprints add another layer to the puzzle, challenging theories of sudden panic. At the forest's edge, under a large Siberian cedar tree, searchers found the first campfire and the first 2 bodies. The men had climbed the tree, breaking branches 5 meters up with their bare hands, even as frostbite set in. From the cedar the tent was visible. They were watching and waiting for something. Both men wore only underwear, yet had not simply collapsed. Krivoshenko had burns from holding fire with numb hands. The cedar tree scene is haunting, showing the hikers' desperate struggle for survival. 3 more bodies, Dyatlov, Kolmogorova, and Slobodin, were found scattered between the cedar and the tent. Each was facing the tent, wearing layers of others' clothing. Injured, freezing, and some already dying, they tried to return to the tent. Slobodin had a 6 cm skull fracture and was walking with a cracked skull in the dark, barefoot in the snow. Their determination to survive, even in the face of overwhelming odds, is both tragic and inspiring. Graphic shows the spatial layout, tent location, cedar tree, and 5 body locations marked with distances. The 3 found between tent and cedar were retreating back, while the final 4 were in a ravine under 4 meters of snow. This map helps visualize the tragedy, showing how the group's final movements were deliberate, not chaotic. The recovery map is a key piece of evidence in understanding the sequence of events. Months later, under 4 meters of snow in a ravine 75 meters past the cedar, the final 4 bodies were found. The injuries here defy explanation: fractured ribs, missing tongue, eyes and lips, massive skull fracture, and radioactivity. The force needed to cause these injuries was compared to a car crash, yet there were no external wounds or blood. Something crushed their chests from the inside or delivered a shock wave so intense it shattered bone without breaking skin. The ravine scene is the most disturbing and mysterious part of the Dyatlov Pass case. The medical examiner stated that the force needed to cause Dubinina's and Zolotaryov's rib fractures was comparable to a car crash at high speed. Yet there were no external wounds, no bruising, and no blood on the snow. Something crushed their chests from the inside, or delivered a shock wave so intense it shattered bone without breaking skin. This baffling detail has fueled countless theories and remains one of the most perplexing aspects of the case. Lyudmila Dubinina was found kneeling against a rock, her face pressed into the stone. Her tongue, eyes, and part of her lips were missing. The official explanation was scavenging animals, but her body was under 4 meters of snow, and no animal tracks were found. Other victims nearby were not similarly damaged. This gruesome detail has become a focal point for speculation and doubt, as it defies simple explanation. Several hikers' clothing, especially Kolvatov and Dubinina, showed elevated levels of radioactivity. The Soviet explanation was residual contamination from the Kishtim nuclear disaster, but the contamination pattern did not match simple skin contact. Kishtim was 350 kilometers away and 2 years earlier. The presence of radioactivity adds another layer of mystery, connecting the Dyatlov Pass incident to broader Soviet-era nuclear concerns. Soviet government's behavior after the incident fueled conspiracy theories. The area was closed for 3 years, files were sealed, and the verdict was vague. Families and researchers were denied access to investigation files, and several pages were missing when released after the Soviet collapse. The secrecy and lack of transparency suggest that authorities were hiding something, whether out of embarrassment, fear, or deeper motives. Multiple witnesses, including soldiers and meteorologists, reported seeing glowing orange spheres in the night sky above the Urals around the time of the incident. The Soviet military acknowledged the sightings but offered no explanation. A photograph from Krivoshenko's camera, taken the night of February 1, 1959, shows an unexplained bright light in the sky, the last photo ever taken by the group. This detail has fueled UFO and paranormal theories. Semyon Zolotaryov was 38, much older than the others, a WWII veteran, and joined the group days before departure. After the Soviet collapse, researchers found he had changed his name at least twice and had incomplete military records. Some suggest he was a Soviet informant, possibly assigned to monitor the group. His body was found with a camera strapped to his chest, protected inside his coat. Whatever he expected to photograph, he expected to survive. In 2019, Russian prosecutors proposed a delayed slab avalanche. A small slab of snow, destabilized when the hikers cut into the slope, shifted hours later while they slept. The impact crushed some hikers, forcing the group to slash their way out. In 2021, Swiss scientists ran computer simulations and confirmed that a slab avalanche could produce the injuries in flight seen. However, no avalanche debris was found, and the slope was typically too shallow. The slab avalanche theory is scientifically credible but riddled with gaps. Infrasound theory suggests that a specific wind pattern across the mountain created low-frequency sound waves, inducing extreme anxiety, panic, and disorientation. The hikers felt an invisible terror, slashed the tent, and fled. Infrasound has been shown to cause irrational panic in laboratory conditions. This theory explains the psychological element, the mass panic and failure to dress, but does not account for the physical injuries like crushed ribs and missing tongue. Northern Urals were a hotbed of Soviet military activity. Witnesses reported unusual lights and explosions, and radioactive traces were found on the hikers' clothes. Some believe the group was killed by a Soviet military test, possibly a parachute mine that creates a shockwave without leaving a crater. This could explain the internal injuries and radioactivity, but not why the hikers fled into the night rather than sheltering in place. The military theory remains controversial. Some early theories suggested a conflict with the indigenous Mansi people, who considered Kholat Syakhl sacred ground. However, this was quickly dismissed. The Mansi were cooperative with investigators, and no foreign footprints or evidence of struggle were found. The Mansi attack theory is highly unlikely and was dismissed even by Soviet investigators. Katabatic winds, cold air rushing downhill at extreme speed, can reach hurricane force in mountain passes. A sudden katabatic event could have slammed the tent, forced the group out, and caused rapid hypothermia and disorientation. However, katabatic winds don't explain the rib fractures, radioactivity, or missing tongue. This theory is useful as a contributing factor but not a complete answer. For completeness, we must mention the paranormal theories. Sovietera Yeti and UFO explanations cite unexplained lights and the orange spheres witnessed by others. These theories generally fail to explain any specific piece of physical evidence in a coherent, testable way. While not supported by evidence, they persist in popular culture and keep the mystery alive. After the Soviet collapse, portions of the original investigation files were released. Lead investigator Lev Ivanov concluded unknown compelling natural force. Autopsies noted hypothermia, burns, abrasions, skull fractures, and radioactivity. Several pages were missing, and Ivanov later stated he believed a UFO or extraordinary phenomenon was involved. He admitted being pressured to close the investigation and classify the files. Lev Ivanov, the lead investigator, admitted 30 years later that he personally believed something extraordinary, possibly extraterrestrial, was involved. He said he had been pressured to close the investigation and classify the files. In 1959, in the Soviet Union, you did not write that in your report. Ivanov's admission adds a new dimension to the mystery, suggesting official suppression of information. 60 years after the incident, public pressure forced Russia to reopen the Dyatlov Pass case. The 2019 reinvestigation considered only 3 causes: avalanche, hurricane force wind, and snow slab collapse. Paranormal, military, and criminal acts were excluded. The case was closed again in July 2020 with the conclusion: slab avalanche. Critics noted the reinvestigation deliberately limited its scope, ensuring a natural explanation would be found. Families of the 9 hikers criticized the 2019 reinvestigation, calling it a whitewash. Key questions were not addressed: the missing tongue, radioactivity, camera photo, and Zolotaryov's identity. The reinvestigation's narrow scope left many dissatisfied, and the mystery remains unresolved. The public's response highlights the enduring fascination and frustration surrounding the Dyatlov Pass case. Dyatlov Pass Incident has generated more conspiracy theories, books, documentaries, and academic papers than almost any other unsolved event in modern history. Over 66 years, it remains one of the most searched unsolved mystery topics globally. The pass is now a pilgrimage site, with hikers traveling from around the world to stand where the tent once stood. The legacy is not just in the unanswered questions, but in the enduring human fascination with mystery. Memorial stone at Dyatlov Pass, erected by the hikers' families, stands on the remote, treeless slope. The bleak landscape gives some sense of the utter isolation the 9 experienced on their final night. The memorial is a place of remembrance and reflection, drawing visitors who seek to understand or simply honor those lost. Every year the same questions remain. Why did they cut the tent rather than use the door? What were they running from? What crushed their ribs without leaving a mark? Where did Dubin and his tongue go? Why were the clothes radioactive? What was Zolotaryov's camera pointed at? What did Lev Ivanov see that he spent 30 years unable to say? These questions keep the Dyatlov Pass mystery alive, fueling endless speculation and investigation. Kholat Syakhl in the Mansi language means dead mountain. The Mansi had another name for the pass itself, the Mountain of the Dead. This ominous name adds a layer of folklore and cultural significance to the tragedy, reminding us that the Dyatlov Pass was always a place of mystery and danger. The 9 hikers were experienced enough to know the mountain, rational enough to walk calmly away from the tent as a group, desperate enough to slash through canvas with a knife, selfless enough to give their clothes to the dying, and determined enough to crawl back toward camp with broken ribs and fractured skulls. Their actions in the face of terror show courage and solidarity, even as the mystery remains unsolved. Every explanation leaves something unexplained. The slab avalanche theory works if conditions were exactly right, but gaps remain. Infrasound explains panic but not injuries. Military test explains injuries but not behavior. Katabatic wind is partial. Paranormal theories persist but lack evidence. The Dyatlov Pass case is a web of theories, each with strengths and weaknesses but none fully satisfying. Swiss scientists used computer simulations, including models from the Pixar film Frozen, to test the slab avalanche theory. Their findings confirmed that a slab avalanche on a low-angled slope could produce the injuries in flight seen. However, the absence of avalanche debris and other inconsistencies leave room for doubt. Science has brought us closer to answers, but not all the way. At the heart of the Dyatlov Pass mystery are 9 young people, full of ambition and camaraderie. Their journey was meant to be a test of skill and endurance, but became a story of tragedy and unanswered questions. The human element is what keeps this case alive. Families, friends, and researchers continue to seek closure, driven by empathy and curiosity. The Dyatlov Pass is now a pilgrimage site, attracting hikers and investigators from around the world. Standing on the same slope in the same cold, looking out at the same dark tree line, visitors reflect on the tragedy and the enduring mystery. The site is a place of remembrance, curiosity, and respect for those lost. Despite scientific advances and multiple investigations, the Dyatlov Pass incident remains unsolved. Every answer births a new question, and every theory leaves something unexplained. The enduring questions are what keep the case alive in popular culture and academic circles. The Dyatlov Pass is a reminder that some mysteries may never be fully resolved. The Dyatlov Pass tragedy teaches us about the limits of human knowledge, the unpredictability of nature, and the importance of thorough investigation. It also highlights the need for transparency and openness in official inquiries. The lessons learned from this case extend beyond the mountain, touching on broader themes of trust, science, and the human spirit. Scientists are probably right about the avalanche. The physics work, the simulations hold. A small slab of snow, delayed by hours, crashing silently into a tent in pitch darkness at -30°C could explain the tent cuts, the rush into the cold, and the crushed ribs, but probably has never been good enough for the families or researchers. The Dyatlov Pass remains a shadowy puzzle, with evidence that doesn't fully fit any single theory. Whatever the 9 hikers faced, they faced it together. They did not panic and scatter, they moved with purpose and tried to survive. Their courage and determination in the face of terror are a testament to the human spirit. The Dyatlov Pass mystery is not just about unanswered questions, but about the strength and solidarity of those who face the unknown. Kholat Syakhl, the Mountain of the Dead, remains a place of shadows and unanswered questions. The Dyatlov Pass incident is a story that refuses to fade, drawing new generations of investigators and storytellers. The mountain stands as a silent witness to the tragedy, its secrets still hidden beneath the snow. The Dyatlov Pass mystery lives on, inspiring documentaries, books, and endless debates. It is a story of tragedy, courage, and the limits of human understanding. As we look back on the events of that night in 1959, we are reminded that some mysteries endure, not because they are unsolvable, but because they challenge us to keep asking, keep searching, and keep remembering.